Hello, everyone. Welcome. Very excited for today's webinar, From Quotes to Cash, Demystifying Billing, Subscription, and Entitlement Management. Very excited for today's guest speaker, Lily Varon, Principal Analyst at Forrester. We've got a great session today. Lily, welcome.
Thanks for having me. I'm excited to talk about this because there's so much to say. You know, you wouldn't think, but there is.
Yeah, and just a little bit of housekeeping up front. We want to make this as interactive as possible, so please put your questions into either the chat or the Q&A tab. We'll find you if you have questions. We anticipate 30, 45 minutes worth of discussion and then Q&A as well. So we're here to demystify things for you. So with that, let me hand things off to Lily.
Great. Yeah. Well, welcome everybody. First, I want to load a picture of Michael as a second grader. Just kidding.
Not far off.
I want to start by sort of commiserating with everyone because I think we all feel this way, and we all feel this way in many parts of our lives probably, but for today we'll focus on the fact that it's okay professionally to also feel this way because you know we all of the efforts that we've been doing to sort of modify our processes to maybe go closer to agile delivery, or all the investments and efforts that we've done for digital business transformation, and all of it's not sort of the ROI on it, the business impact on it isn't the same anymore. It used to be, you know, big wins, and now we're sort of doing the same amount of work and getting less return. And part of that is just the way our market has evolved. So we think about we call it sort of technology human symbiosis loop, right? And we know this instinctively, right? We've got technologies coming into the market. Look at generative AI as an example. It sort of empowers customers and employees. Then companies invest in those digital capabilities and in the customer experiences to incorporate some of these new technologies, improving those experiences, and then further empowering the customers and employees. And so the thing, you know, this has always been the case, but what's happening now is that this is happening much more rapidly, and so we can't keep up. We can't keep up, and we're trying, right? And so some of the ways in which we are changing our businesses in order to kind of react to this is building products and experiences that are more flexible to reach those customers where they are. So, for example, buying and using our product experiences are becoming more intertwined. Certainly, we're recognizing that customer acquisition isn't as is quite expensive, is more difficult than it ever was in a competitive environment. But really, the chronology of a customer lifecycle means that the retention side of things is longer. And when we think about the sales cycles that we might be going through, we might be skipping sort of sales motions entirely. We might be skipping the sort of CRM motion entirely in favor of self-service, right? Everything we hear about product-led growth, right? These kind of buzzwords, embedded, kind of commerce experiences, all of that is about truly designing our products and services to meet customers where they are, to monetize where relevant, right? Create commerce moments where relevant in the customer life cycle. And I think that we're starting to recognize monetization and monetization strategies and being flexible around them as ways to maximize growth or capitalize on growth opportunities, given our more cyclical customer life cycle, given our focus on kind of retention and upsells and cross-sells and renewals and earning those renewals. So we're starting to see, monetization finally get its due attention, pricing and price optimization, and all of that goes directly to profit. You would have to kind of undergo this massive kind of cost savings project in order to get the kind of similar impact. And what I think is interesting is, it's not just about subscription, although subscription is a big part of this story, right? Revenera did some research here, right?
Yes. So this is data that we have in our Monetization Monitor 2023 report on monetization models and strategies. It's a report that we do every year. There are a couple of other reports. I think actually the report is in the resource tab, the handouts tab, if anyone is interested in downloading the whole report. And we asked the question of our 454 respondents, what percentage of your monetization models today are perpetual, subscription, consumption, metered, and outcome or value-based, right? So we do see a lot of complexity, right? And to your point, Lily, it's not just subscription. When you look at perpetual is not going anywhere in the same way that on-prem software is not going anywhere anytime soon. And different types of technology companies have different needs in terms of how they're monetizing their software. And when we do look at the subscription model, what's it say here? More than 4 or 5 respondents use subscription models at least moderately in 2023, right? And that makes sense, right? That's a huge model. But also interestingly, and we don't have it necessarily on the slides, there's a lot of interest now in consumption and usage-based models that just speaks to that complexity, not only how software suppliers need to sell, but really that's driven by the demand of how customers want to consume, right? They don't necessarily need perpetual. Subscription may work, but maybe they want different bites at that apple. So,
and it depends on kind of what the product and business, what your customer relationship actually is based upon, how your product is designed, how it's being experienced by your customers. And so I always think about, I say this often, a subscription isn't for every company. It's not right for every product, but a recurring customer relationship is. It's right for everyone. So how do we think about our monetization strategy that is unique to our product and service, that is familiar enough with the customers, or at least intuitive enough to the product experience that we can monetize appropriately, and therefore get that competitive edge or growth that we're seeking. And I liked this in what you guys sort of uncovered in the research.
Yeah, this was interesting too, and I don't know. There are a ton of surprises, but it does sort of validate what you would think is happening in the market. Based on your deployment model, what your monetization model is, and we're seeing a lot of subscription, certainly SaaS and cloud, but even on-prem, and that's no surprise either. But consumption models for on-prem is definitely interesting, and I think some of that speaks to sort of the growth and the interest in elastic models, where you have a certain number of tokens to get temporary or time-bound access to an application that you might just need seasonally or for a particular project.
I love the example of something like as intuitive as the Slack business model, right? Which was, hey, it's about active usage. We're going to monitor if you don't use. It's sort of seat based. It's like, okay, we're gonna charge you based on active users in a month. Well, that is so intuitive for Slack because it's the usage is the value of the product, but that's really intuitive for the customer. Okay, low deployment, there's not a lot of risk involved there. But when you think about incorporating or actually like tracking, what you have to define what active means, you have to enforce, provide access to the tier, that the relevant products and services that are part of that specific product line, and you have to enforce that. And what they have is if you've paid for, I'm going to make it simple, 10 active users and you only use 8, well, then we're going to credit you 2 active user, the next month. And so with that's very intuitive from a product. It matches really beautifully to the product value proposition. But when you think about enforcing that, when you think about assigning those access rights, when you think about calculating what active means per contract, when you think about, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, it sort of starts to expose the complexity of the kind of underpinning technology. One of the things I wanted to talk about too is when we think about the future.
Yeah.
The story that we're probably starting to hear is more is more is more is more, right? Like, it's not just about one monetization strategy. It's about really choosing the monetization approach that is right for the product and for that customer relationship, right?
Yeah, for sure. And building on what you were saying about, aligning price with value, you need to deliver your products and sell your products the way that customers want them. And again, when we look at, the plans for the next 12 to 18 months of what software suppliers think their monetization models are going to increase or decrease, again, no surprise. Subscription term, 59%. Consumption, a little bit surprising. That's a nice jump, that model, 59%. Interestingly, and not surprisingly, decrease in perpetual by 22%, but 45% increase. That's, I wouldn't use the word crazy, but it's surprising.
Yeah.
That this model that a lot of people are dismissive of, and it's subscription. There's still a demand for it, right? There are still customers that want to consume their software that way, and it's very important to your point about selling the way customers want to buy and having the right model for them to get that recurring customer relationship. And the flip side, recurring revenue. It's critical to be able to support all these models.
Yeah. Yeah. And I would argue too, one of the things that's really interesting is when we look at Forrester's data about plans to adopt recurring revenue models, when we slice and dice, so we ask, what are your business priorities? Changing the business model is one of those priorities. When we ask, what are you going to do about that then? If you're changing your business model in this world, in which we know this is quite, that's one very key strategy to kind of adapting to that technology human symbiosis loop. When we ask them what they're going to do about it, globally, the average is 30% say we're explicitly going, a key action is adopting a recurring revenue-based business model. When we slice that by the manufacturers or producers of high-tech products, so software suppliers, ticks up a little bit. Over a third are saying, we're adopting recurring revenue-based business models. And remember, these are sort of likely net new. So we're not even looking at that vast majority that are already adopting recurring revenue-based business model, but maybe they're, thinking about expanding the subscription model, thinking about expanding that usage or consumption piece. When we, Forrester has this concept of a future fit framework or a future fit business, and that's our own sort of assessment of what is best in class based on our research, what leads to growth. Future fit firms, per our research, are adaptable, they're creative, they're resilient, and we have all of these assessment, tools to determine that those firms grow faster. I think 3 times faster than their industry averages. Those firms that have that future fit IT strategy based on our own assessment, more than half say that they're going to adopt a recurring revenue-based business model. And when we slice, now I couldn't put the data up here because I can only use it directional. The sample was directionally. The sample was a little bit small. But when we look at the high-tech the software suppliers who are also future fit, it was 8 out of 10. It was even more. So you can just gradually see this ticking up from the global average to slicing, closing that aperture onto the software suppliers, then closing that aperture on software suppliers that are future fit. Recurring revenue-based business models are a critical component of a best-in-class strategy, right? This is what this data sort of tells me. And so what does that mean for our technology strategy, right? I think we're getting to the meat of the discussion here today, which is, this is kind of just a visual of what I think we know what's happening, right? We've got the customer lifecycle on the top and bottom here that is cyclical, albeit quite angular in my feeble attempts at displaying it. But when we look at our technology stack, whether it be our payments technology, our contract lifecycle management solutions, our entitlements, our billing, our CRM, our ERP, our CPQ, our e-commerce, whatever we have, all of these tools across the lifecycle are evolving to support more recurring customer life cycles, to support recurring revenue models. And so there's a lot of confusion because, you know, the everyone might be calling themselves, you know, that they have subscription management, for example. You might see that run all the way through the technology stack, but the functionality varies slightly, you know, solution to solution. What kind of business problem they solve around managing a recurring revenue model is slightly different, but there's a lot of overlapping language because in order to qualify or quantify what's happening requires a little bit more double clicking, as it were. And so on the surface, there's just this mishmash of solutions that are all changing to be more recurring revenue friendly, from the front office to the back office. But what I think, and this is true whether, by the way, whether we're selling the software or whether we're buying it, right? Importantly, because if we are selling the software, we're evolving our product to sell to customers whose customers might be more recurring, you know, in their and needing to be more flexible in their monetization strategy while we're undergoing the same transformation ourselves. And what I think I want to kind of pinpoint here is we often think of entitlement solutions, billing solutions, subscription management, or payments, or tax, contract lifecycle as these kind of back office tools, right? Necessary evils in terms of investment, or you know, kind of non-strategic, more tactical investments. But what we're seeing in a world in which the front office needs that creativity to be able to sell flexibly, adaptably, creatively, we need the rest of the technology stack to kind of evolve in kind and support that. But we also need to realize that in a world in which privacy is ever more important, where compliance and standards, where globalization is also an initiative, there are standards that the back office must maintain, right? And must enforce, that has to run through the entire stack. And so what we're starting to see is this really interesting kind of re-emergence. Those who were in software in the early 80s and mid 80s tell me that the middle office domain was a concept back then. I wasn't quite tuned into it at that point, but we're seeing this kind of what's old is new again, maybe, right? The middle office is having a resurgence where these billing tools, these entitlements tools, these payments tools are enabling that front office creativity with the guardrails and the support and the enforcement that the back office demands, right? And it goes vice, you know, it goes the other way, the other direction as well. Sometimes these middle office tools are enabling some flexibility that the back office tools, you know, aren't built to support, right? They're exposing perhaps in entitlements, in billing and payments where there might be a direct customer impact or customer facing kind of experience. We might be, you know, we're complementing the back office in some ways with these middle office tools. So this sort of I want to challenge this thinking of billing, of payments, of tax, of some of these tools that entitlements that we think of as maybe tactical, not strategic. I think that's as everything we've seen leading up to this slide. I think that's a mistake.
Yeah, and you'll be surprised, Lily, that I will say, yes, these are very strategic because they're really sort of the flywheel, right, that makes everything work, right? When you talk about that customer relationship, that customer experience, all of that should be transparent. You know, the underworkings, right? The enforcement, the guardrails, you know, the usage analytics of, you know, how much a customer is consuming and the insights that they can gain from that data.
Yes,
should be mostly in the background, but that is sort of what's driving a lot of the capabilities to get to those better customer relationships and drive that revenue.
Right. And the entitlements and billing work really well together there precisely because of the data that they own, right? They become those functional kind of linchpins, this like vital kind of intersection point, because they own what a customer has paid for or has sort of been sold, plus what customers have accessed and used,
Absolutely.
right? Which is, to your point, is the lifeblood for the rest of the revenue engine, as we might call it, to work. But I'm gonna fly through some of these things because I think we know this intuitively, but just to illustrate the point, right? That overlap, that front office, middle office, back office overlap is an overlap on purpose, right? Is almost, I want to illustrate that there is quite a lot of functionality overlap between solutions. So take billing technology, for example. Per my definition, billing technology has two core functions. It does two things. It has billing logic and it has amendments, orchestration, and management, meaning it manages the billing related consequences to anything in the customer lifecycle. But when you look at the many possible common functions that a billing tool might have, there's usage data management, there may be product catalogs, there may be revenue recognition tools, there's certainly entitlements management is a very common sort of yes and, right? We have billing and we have amendments and we have sort of a lighter weight, most often, entitlements management and these are billing tools. And so it's important to understand the definition, what those functions are that entitlements management solutions have, that billing solutions have, what role they play, and map that to your requirements. So for us, billing technology is software that determines the value a customer owes a merchant and at which frequency. And that frequency piece is becoming more important in a recurring revenue world, right? It also determines any, as I said, billing related consequences to changes in the customer relationship. Most often that's a renewal or an upgrade, but it could be anything else, right? It could be an access that changes a billing consequence, right? They self-serviced and they opened something and they got notified that that's going to, that's an upcharge, and yep, fine, continue on the customer journey, right? When we think about entitlement technology, it's software that acts as this administrator of a user, and that user could be a partner, it could be a channel partner, it could be the customer, of course, but it could be the channel partner, it could be the end user of a customer, and it administrates that user's access rights to your product, to your service, to the experience, and the amount or extent of those rights. And so hopefully you can see the distinction there, right? That there's this sort of the anchor, the center of gravity for billing is what has been sold and what is hopefully paid for. And entitlements is what the customer has the right to and when and how much, right? And that is interrelated. They're interrelated because it is dependent on, and they're dependent on each other, right? Does that vibe with kind of Revenera's definition of the entitlements world?
It does. Yeah. And again, they're all part of the quote to cash process, right? They all need to talk to one another. But, from an entitlement management perspective, we're really talking about, how do you create those packages? How do you create those pricing bundles? And how do you support that? We were talking about all these different monetization models earlier. How do you support those? Because those are not unique to an individual customer. One customer might have multiple needs in the way they consume the software. So the ability to offer a subscription, but then also perhaps offer usage-based token licensing to somebody. And licensing, I guess, is a sort of a controversial term in the SaaS world, use rights to an application. So it's important to be able to manage that, to be able to be agnostic to the deployment model, but also to support these different monetization models. And again, like you said, have those guardrails around usage and drive that usage data back into the system, see those analytics so you can see, from a supplier perspective, is there a churn risk? Is there a retention risk? What sort of peak periods are looking like in terms of usage? And then from an end customer perspective, also being able to have a sort of a customer portal to see what their usage is, so they have a better sense of what their value is that they're getting out of their investment in that application. So when we talk about entitlement management, we are sort of talking about a multitude of things, right? Enforcement models, monetization models, data insights that you're getting, sort of real time to understand what the usage looks like. And it's important to see it all in one single pane of glass, right? So you may have multiple products, you may have multiple deployment models, you may have multiple monetization models, but to get that very clear 360-degree view of your customer, it all needs to be in one place, and you need to streamline your operations to get there.
Right. And one of the things I think is interesting is when you think about, I mean, in my world, I often spend time thinking about billing complexity across account hierarchies, account, agreements, contracts, geographies, product lines. When you think about kind of the growing complexity in the business model, entitlements becomes more important, right? not a question mark, period.
Yes. Yeah, for sure. And when we look at some of these examples of different business models, that becomes really clear right away, right? And we haven't specifically said it, but there are going to be cases where you have, if you're in the device world, software on your devices that's air gapped. And you still have to enforce these models. You still have to provide guardrails around these models. So it is really important to be able to support that. And again, I keep coming back to it, but give the customer what they want, the way they want to buy it.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So yeah, I'm not sure. We need to drill down into all these different models, but there is a lot. As the slide says, there is complexity. It's complicated. My hair was actually the color of Lily's hair when I first started in this job, but it's complicated, and there's a lot of intermoving parts. and we'll get to this, that you need expertise to really understand, what needs to be managed in a entitlement management system, what needs to be part of your billing system.
Right. And one of these things too, another critical adjacency that we've talked about a bit, and I think is just going to become a bigger part of the conversation, is about identity, right? Authenticating a user in a world in which we're monetizing flexibly, we're creating, we're going back to that visual of the buying and using becoming intertwined. And then if you think about it in a B2B or even a B2C, when we think about a family plan, or we think about, access across maybe a multi-layered parent-child relationship in an account hierarchy, right? The ability to kind of bill properly and provide access rights is contingent upon being able to confidently and effectively authenticate.
Yeah.
This is another area in which I think there's increasing overlap, but still quite a bit of kind of space between solutions and between kind of kind of market discussions and kind of technology overlaps, right? There's gaps.
Yeah, and certainly, when we have the build or buy discussion with customers and prospects, this is one that comes up all the time. And when we say build in our world also includes, can we leverage an existing system that we already have and sort of shoehorn it to make it do the things that we think it should do? Mm-hmm. Short answer, no, probably not, depending on what stage you're at, right? If you're early on, yeah, it might help you for a little while. One of the analogies I like to use, certainly when it comes to IAM, and you're not old enough, really, but if you think back to the day when you go to the health club, you had a paper card and you would show it at the desk, you walked in, you did whatever you want. It was all you can eat, right? These days, it's a lot more complicated. Well, do you have the bronze membership, the silver membership, the gold membership? And now you come in, you scan your card, and depending what level membership you have, that's going to determine your access rights to the different features inside that health club. Do they call them health clubs anymore? I don't know. I don't go to the gym. But
think so. I don't attend them personally.
Yes. But so it could be, you know what? If you're at this level, you can use all the weight machines that you want, and you have 5 times in the pool a month. You can pay as you go for tennis courts, and we'll charge you a certain amount. But you need a system that's going to track that, and it's not just sort of the identity of, yep, Michael's a member, come on in. It's, okay, Michael's a member. He's also purchased these access rights.
Exactly.
And we need to track and account
that this is Michael.
This is Michael, but here's what he's enabled to do. What the guardrails are for his activities there.
And that analogy is a wonderful one, because in fact, we had a wealth management company of all places come to us and say, think of us like a gym, right? Think of us as there's all these different products and services. There's all these different kind of like agents and brokers and other wealth management tools and software and all of these things that have explicitly, to your point, right? We need to map our product strategy to the customer journey, and manage, the identity and access management, entitlements, and billing all work in tandem to deliver that to meet the merchant's goals of making money and growing, and delivering good customer experiences, hopefully, and then to meet the customer's goals, to let them engage with the products and services that they have access to, let them upgrade where relevant, let them downgrade where relevant, let them, achieve their goals with whatever your value proposition is. All of these things work in tandem. And I think this is the other critical point that we should talk about. You made a point earlier about some shoehorning. And we call this function first. This is a thing that we talk about at Forrester quite a bit, because in a world in which there is a lot of overlapping functionality, where there is, let's say a capability that is being talked about across technology vendors, how do you as a buyer make sense of this? How do you as a buyer kind of avoid either sort of customizing unnecessarily or buying, something that will end up kind of bloating your ecosystem with technology? And this is what we say. This is the way to do it. And it's exactly what you were talking about, Michael, right? It's like, let's focus on the business problem. Like, the outcome is what you talked about. The outcome is, do we have an existing solution? Do we need a specialty solution? Or is there, something else that we're replatforming that may have what we need? But the way we get there is not there first. The way we get there is, all right, let's focus on the business problem that we're trying to solve. And this is really important as it relates to the business problems that we've identified in the business thus far in this discussion. It's like, is it churn? Is it piracy? Is it revenue leakage? What is and this business problem is often, even if the answer is, a point entitlement solution or an entitlement solution with subscription management capabilities, the business problem that gets you there could be so varied depending on where you sit in the organization as a user and say, okay, I'm in the customer experience department, I'm in the billing operations department, I'm in the, either way, right? So the clarifying that business problem first is so important. And then you can identify what capabilities you need to solve that business problem. So, if that business problem is churn, for example, you might need billing or payments automation. Maybe it's that, money is being left on the table because you can't process an auto renewal or something, right? Or it is because your experience is wrong and you can't manage this sort of right access or usage, or you have zero idea how customers are using your product, etc. What are those capabilities? And then you can associate the tech functions that would enable the necessary capability to solve that business problem. And that order is really important, even though it seems kind of elementary in a world in which there's so much noise. This helps focus. Then from there, you can determine whether there's capabilities in your existing technology stack. You may find that function already or a lightweight version of it instantly, so you can get started and figure out where to go from there. Or there may be a point solution that comes in and solves that business problem. This I find is less and less likely in kind of billing and entitlements and access, but SSO solutions, for example, could be a point solution that might solve something. Or you look and say, well, I need to, if it's a billing problem, well, I'm actually replatforming my ERP, or I'm replatforming if it's a quote to cash problem, right? And there's, it's a more front office thing. I'm replatforming my CRM, and I'm going to build this capability or this function requirement into my assessment of those big tools. And this is just going to be, this is sort of what you do now. This is the focus of the discussion today. Is like, hopefully we've made the point enthusiastically about the future of our businesses requiring better billing capabilities, better billing functions, better entitlements capabilities, better entitlement functions, et cetera, et cetera. And so now it's the time to sit back and say, okay, what do I have? What business problem am I feeling today? And how can I look at the solutions and capabilities that I need? And then assess the technology applications, the applications to solve that problem.
And it definitely depends where you are in your journey, right? As a business, as a software supplier. If you're early phase, you can probably get away with some very simple solutions. But if you're planning on growing, if you're anticipating or hearing from customers that their needs are changing and they need to buy different ways, consume software in different ways, you're involved in merger and acquisition activity and acquiring new products that need to be incorporated into your processes. And again, to get that single point of view, there is that complexity that requires multiple of these systems because each one does a very different thing.
Right. And when so this is, we're sort of recognizing today the kind of urgent need for this kind of flexibility, the need for this adaptability, this creativity, this in order to be resilient, in order to turn that Michael's second grade picture from earlier into what we'd like to see. But when we think about the future too, when we start thinking about like going a little bit further down, there's also sort of pressure on this space. And why is that? Well, we look at digital experiences at Forrester. It's part of our bread and butter, right? And today we say customers have about 300 to 400 digital moments, interaction points with brands across the day. Today, naturally, as we will know instinctively as consumers ourselves, web and mobile dominate, right? You might be one of those early adopters and you might be engaging with voice assistants in increasing ways. I know I certainly am starting to trust my voice assistants a little bit more with things, mostly timers, but we're engaging in more virtual assistants and increasingly more, let's say, immersive experiences. But the vast majority of our digital experiences are web and mobile today, right? That's what the green and the yellow here of these 300, 400, kind of digital moments illustrate. But when we fast forward, when we think really futuristically, when we think about how, what our business will look like or what our digital experiences will look like in 2050, our website and our mobile apps are going to play a much more minor role in the way that our customers engage with us. And they're going to be, the trend of more is more. They're not going away, but they're probably play a quite different role, a more, specialized role, because most of our digital experiences will be immersive. They will be embedded into our lives in a more invisible way. So conversational will certainly be there, but there might be even what we call outbound or proactive experiences, anticipatory experiences, where maybe a virtual assistant is layering on top of this, but us as software sellers, we're going to have to proactively push, take cues from our customers' context, orchestrate the experience that they will need anticipate and deliver it. And so we're talking about the future of digital experiences are much more immersive and much more invisible or anticipatory. And we have the beginnings of that today, right? We have the beginnings of that today with our virtual assistants, but we still have to talk to these guys like machines. We still have to navigate this digital experience with this merchant, this digital experience with this merchant, that digital experience with that one. And the onus is really on us to make those if-then decisions across this diverse ecosystem. In the other important piece of this is that it'll be more open. So we will have to work as suppliers of software in a much more open ecosystem where, in order to anticipate or solve that digital experience that our customer might need in the future, we might have to work with someone else's product or service, right? And how we deliver that anticipated customer experience will be dependent on not only us, but on our ecosystem in a much more explicit way than it is today. And so what I hope is what you're already reading between the lines here is, given that the point and click or pinch and zoom experience is going by the wayside, or is becoming a much smaller piece of the overall digital experience, think about how, when the engagement with your product or service becomes much more immersive, becomes anticipatory in the future, how you can deliver those products or services without monetizing flexibly, without having really good control over identity and authentication and access and monetization. Because all of these things, we call them kind of the invisible and valuable in this point, right? Because they become the foundation upon which that freedom or that invisibility can happen. It's what sort of you're doing the hard work in order to make, that your technology here will be doing the hard work to make sure that it's invisible on that customer journey, that it can be immersive, that it can be invisible. And so that's, quite futuristic, but I think it's important to talk about today, because you start by using this function first framework and by thinking about these tools as a critical middle office domain that is mission critical to the future of your business, then you can start setting down that path. So to wrap up, right? The key takeaways, if you walk away with nothing else, this is what we want you to understand, right? That yes, you have reason to be a little bit mystified and exhausted and frazzled in your day-to-day, because we are in a world in which rapid reinvention is the only competitive differentiation. And what does that mean? It destabilizes everything. It's a new foundation upon which adaptability, creativity, and resiliency become the new norm, right? And so or the new North Star, I should say, the new goal, right? We have hopefully made the point how entitlements and billing software are not just this tactical tool. They're actually critical for this reinvention. They are part of this new middle office domain that enables that front office creativity without exposing your business to more risk, and still maximizing growth opportunities. And that you can make sense of a very complicated ecosystem today by taking a function-first approach, this function-first thinking in your tech buying, to determine that right approach for you in technology buying. And of course, billing, entitlements, identity and access management, all of these tools will play an even bigger role in the future of your business when these digital experiences will be more invisible and more immersive. So hopefully that summarizes what we were trying to. Did I miss anything? Anything else you want to add to that?
I don't think so, Lily. I mean, your points are great, right? Like, for something to be invisible, for something to look seamless, for it to be streamlined, to be frictionless, that doesn't happen automatically. There's a lot of stuff that needs to be in place to make that work. A lot of intercommunication between systems and data that needs to be pulled and visualized and shared to get there. So I think that was fantastic. And thank you so much for joining us today. That was, not surprisingly, a very enthusiastic a session, which I knew it would be. Really want to thank you for your time. Thank everybody in the audience for joining us today. It doesn't look like we have questions because I think either our enthusiasm was a little bit too much, or we delivered.
Or they're marinating. It's marinating.
It is. And certainly feel free to reach out.
Open invitation for anyone to contact us. I mean, I'm speaking for both of us, I think, yes, but correct me if I'm wrong. You know, LinkedIn, emails, you know, things like that. Contact us. We're happy to chat, to take questions offline. You know, I'm curious about your guys' thoughts and what you're doing in this world too. So don't hesitate to contact us.
Fantastic. Well, again, thanks everybody for joining us, and Lily, thank you as always for bringing.
A pleasure. Let's do it again.
Absolutely. Take care, everybody.
Bye.